Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. I'm your host, Todd Nesloney. I'm an elementary principal in Texas, and I love every week bringing you people who have encouraged, inspired, or challenged me in some way or another, and allowing you to hear a piece of their story every week. I am so thrilled to have this week's guest of Reagan Tunstall. Reagan, thank you so much for being here. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are?
Thank you so much, and I'm really honored to be here too. Hi, I'm Reagan Tunstall, and my biggest achievement is my 18 years as a classroom teacher. That's my passion. That's my favorite thing. And I've also been lucky enough to make teacher resources, and then through my blog and through that, actually working with education businesses and partnering, and now getting to do a national guided math conference all around the US, just sharing my passion with teachers. So now teaching teachers.
You know, it's so funny. I feel like I'm talking to like a teacher celebrity here because my teachers at my school are like so obsessed with you and your materials. And so when I mentioned to some of them that I was going to be chatting with you, they're like, "Oh my gosh, we love her." So you've got that kind of status. But tell me about your career into education. Did you always want to be a teacher?
Oh, absolutely. In kindergarten, I remember studying the teachers' bulletin boards and like planning mine out as well, and thinking, okay, well, kindergarten's done and I might teach that, but let me see how first grade goes. Always. And I would come, my mom was a teacher too, but she taught senior English, so really different from what I enjoy. I would come home and like debrief the bulletin boards and be like, well, summer's coming, so now she put sunglasses up, and just like these things were so important to me. I always knew, and I love to share the story of just kind of how I became so passionate about guided math was during that first year of teaching, when I had finally gotten my own overhead projector, and I was standing there with like a scripted math program, my transparencies, and I had the little skirt that you put around the overhead that had all the manipulatives in it. That was it. I was so happy. I was just standing there like, I am a teacher. So the big dreams right there. Yeah. I taught half my career in California and then the other half in Texas, the motherland, as my dad calls it. That's where I live now, San Antonio. And I grew up in Texas, but I wanted to go to college in LA. So whatever. So I did that, and then ended up staying there for 15 years. So my first 10 years of teaching were in California, which I love and we visit. So, since 2007, I've been back in Texas, and I've been experimenting with, guided math all along the way, because that was one thing that really just, I felt like I was doing somewhat of small group instruction, of course, with reading and primary grades and things like that. But I always felt that tug and that teacher guilt about, what about math? Why is the structure so different? And just meeting their needs and allowing that exploration time. So I've always been thirsty for that, and for just trying out all the different things that I would learn from different articles and books and things like that. But what's crazy is in 2009, I think it was the end of 2009, so basically 2010, I started a blog for the parents of my students. And I thought, okay, this will be great. Blogs were cool. And I was like, I will put all the pictures on there and share our lessons and our field trips and all of it. So I spent hours and hours doing that. And I was like, okay, tell your parents it's Tunstall's teaching. And nobody was looking at it. And I was just pouring my heart into this thing. And I loved it. But one day I finally got an email that said, you have a comment on your blog. And I was like, that's it. Who's getting extra credit? Like, yes. And I went and looked, and it was actually a teacher, and she was asking about a lesson. And so we started talking, and Then I started looking at her classroom and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing, because now it's like we're so isolated, all day, and we want to know what everyone else is doing, but there's no way to know. So that was like my way to get outside of my classroom. And that was a turning point, because then all that passion I had for my blog and for the lessons and things, it was actually for teachers. And I started to talk with other teachers through that. And that just organically kind of led me to where I am, to be honest, just following that. But what I'd really like to share is that, like, just kind of how that happened, because I know that it's like, oh, you had a blog and now you sell on Teachers Pay Teachers, and oh, that's great. But like, the truth of it is, I had been, so in 2009, my husband had been home for like a year and a half with medical issues. So my teacher salary was not even enough to pay the mortgage. Plus, we have 2 kids and all the sports and all of the stuff. They were elementary age at the time. So things were rough, and like financially rough. And I remember just like the stress of that. And at the time, hadn't started the blog or any of that yet. And I was just kind of, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? So I would cry myself to school, like, get your act together. It's going to be okay. And then get to school and just lose myself in, my students and the classroom. And it's what's crazy is, like, one of the hardest years of my life, I got Teacher of the Year. And I think it's because I needed that class. I needed just that release, and that, like, nothing else matters when I'm in this classroom. I can focus on these babies and have the best day ever, because it's a safe place. It's my, my passion and all of that. So it's like I had these 2 worlds going on. And so then I would get home from school, and then all the stress and the anxiety of, like, how am I actually going to survive and pay these bills would come back. So what ended up happening was, I told my husband, like, I think we need to sell the house, because we're not, like, in 2 more months, we can't borrow from ourselves anymore. We're done. And so it was just so stressful. So we put the house up for sale. I truly was, like, at a loss. Like, I didn't know what we were going to do. And I went to my room and had one of those just, like, blowing snot, like, full surrender. I don't know what I'm going to do, God, please help me. And I just had this prayer time where it was like, I pray, but like a full surrender. Like, I absolutely, truly do not know what I'm going to do tomorrow. And I just remember, like, giving him my marriage, giving him my kids, giving him the house, and just like, I can't do this anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, please just take it, turn it around, help me, whatever I need to do, change my heart, change whatever it is. And amazingly, like, within a week, my husband, Tony, was like, hey, I got you the new version of PowerPoint. And I was like, why? What's PowerPoint? And, which is what I create on now. And he was like, I don't know, but it looks like you can do stuff, like, for your class. It looks cool. Check it out. And so I started playing with PowerPoint. I made the parent blog. And what's even more awesome is that he would have procedures every 6 weeks, and for a year and a half. And every time it was like, we'd get our hopes up and then no, get our hopes up, no. And you wait 6 weeks for this procedure. So he had one the next day after I prayed. And I was like, okay, this is going to be different. I know it. But when he came out of the room, he just looked so miserable. And I remember, like, it's okay, it's okay. But just that like dread. And we were in the car on the way home, and, I had to keep pulling over, and he was throwing up, and I was like, no, I thought it was good. Just losing hope and feeling so scared again. But I was, like, literally up all night playing on PowerPoint and having so much fun with it. And he walked out in the morning and he was like, look, and he started doing jumping jacks. And I was like, go get a job. It was so awesome, like unbelievable, that God was just like, I got this, finally you put it in my hands. Let me help you. But what's really just awesome is that it's like, I can say like, well, it was great timing on all of like the blog lining up with TPT being new and Pinterest being new, and all of these things kind of aligned, which I know is just like part miracle, and then part, effort. So it's like, I definitely put hours and hours and my passion into it, but I know that at the root, at the base of it was that surrendered, like that moment where I just said, I don't know what's going to happen, but I can't do this. So that's truly what I believe where it came from. And I just am so thankful. And now I feel that, okay, you've given me this huge blessing, and I just need to make sure that I take it where it needs to be and how it needs to be. And so the amazing part is that I was creating things and putting them up for free, sharing them. And I would notice that like I would put something up for the weekend on my blog and it would have like 2,000 downloads, like, free stuff. And someone said, you should really put this on Teachers Pay Teachers. And I was like, what's that? And would anyone actually pay for this? And why would they, And so, but then I was like, 2,000 downloads, man, maybe. And so I just kind of experimented with that. And in my first week, I made $5, felt amazing. Walking around the house, I was like, I'm an author. I made $5. But just, incredible. And then that just gives you, even more passion that these teachers, and they're thanking you, and you're helping them, they're helping you. And so it just kind of grew from there. And always I've just, gravitated toward math. And what really pushed me as far as guided math, because I was doing guided math in my classroom, and we had 2 different big box textbook curriculums, both great in their own ways. No curriculum is going to answer every problem in your world, but they always have good things about them, and then areas where you're like, not so great. Well, so in my district, we are standards based, so you can use the resources they supply or whatever resources you want, but just following the scope and sequence, making sure you're teaching the standards you need to teach at the time you need to teach them. So we really had a great, I'm just thankful that my district was that way, that they trusted us to be the expert and to use the resources in the best way possible. So I was using them, but those textbook type curriculums are not written in a way like that is the guided math structure. So you have to then spend the time to like take that information and say, well, this is what I would do in a small group for that concept. And this is what I would do in the mini lesson. And kind of, it's just more hours. And so I was teaching this format without a resource that was really answering what I needed. So I was making all these crazy lists for each of my groups. And I was like, okay, when I get home, I'm going to make this. But then I was tired. So I was like, okay, no, I'm not. And I was telling my husband, like, I just think I'm going to maybe a 1-year leave of absence. So I have to write this thing. It's in me, but I don't have time. I can't do it on a weekend. And he was like, no, teacher retirement. He's a financial advisor. So he was not letting me off the hook. And I was like, no, really, I really just need time. It's huge and overwhelming, and I can't just do a lesson. I need to do a lot. And so, no. Well, my mom and I was also presenting guided math through other avenues, but so being absent for that, and then coming back and being in my classroom and just feeling guilt from that, I was absent so much. Then my mom got sick, really sick. We didn't know what was wrong at the time, but I'm her main person. She's 40 minutes away. So the emotional like stress from that, plus being absent for her, being absent for presenting, I was like a basket case by April. And so this is years later after the other story I told. So I remember I was like, I'm taking the leave of absence. Because I was on family leave for my mom, but like intermittent, so I could still go to school. But it was like twice a week that I was actually making it into school, and just the guilt I had was just I was feeling so awful. But anyway, so I said I'm doing it. I took the next year, which was 2015-16, and I was like, this is just going to be the year I write guided math. Well, I began writing it and taking care of my mom, and then I was dropping my son off to middle school, which I never got to do, which was really fun because he finally didn't have to take the bus. So I was dropping him off, and my phone rang, and it was Hand to Mind, and they were saying like, we found your guided math, and we truly believe in this philosophy, and it aligns with our passion and our philosophy, and we would like to meet with you about manufacturing and producing it. And I was like, let me pull over. So I was like, oh my gosh, is this really happening? And it's again, just more blessings where it's like, I could not even have ever planned this. And truly have no, like, if I had a business plan, it wouldn't have been this great. Like, I could not have imagined it. So it's just amazing that I had the time off, and then I had the ability to write it, and just, so here we are, and I'm just so incredibly thankful.
Well,
so now I get to, oh, sorry.
Something that you really make a good point of is, I love when you talk about in your story about how you just, you laid it all out there for God and gave it all over, but you also didn't just sit there and wait for God to fix everything. Like, I think that's such an important part of your story is that you were like, I'm going to lay this out there, but I'm going to put in the work. And I'm going to get out there. And you really applied yourself and made choices to really put the work in. I think that's what's important for people to know. This isn't something that you're like, oh, this is so easy, bang, 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 done. Now I can go teach. Now I can go do this. It's like, no, you put in a lot of work to make this happen. And you're still putting in work, perfecting it, changing it, presenting, all that kind of stuff. What do you think is the biggest thing? You told an amazing transformational story there. You into your career, into your husband's health, your mother, you're changing your career, you're doing this other stuff. What do you think is the biggest thing you learned about yourself through all of this?
Oh gosh. Definitely. And that was easy because I'm still learning it and working on it. And that's balance. I definitely went off the deep end. I dove head in, and I am naturally and like overachieving. Like, I want to do the best I can. So, but that was times a million with this, because it was like everything I love and everything that I feel like I'm prone to be good at. So then I was like, and I'll be honest, like, ignoring my family, not wanting to stop to make dinner, not wanting to, oh, go get yourself something to eat. Just, I'm sorry, the house was a wreck. I'll deal with it next weekend. I had stuff to make, so it was just the balance definitely has been a huge struggle. And, I do have some regrets where I'm like, man, I didn't handle that like I should. Right. And I think that, I've definitely come a long way, but, and part of that being my mom's health, it would pull me away. So we ended up finding out she had brain cancer. And up until then, I would still, be on my computer, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. if possible. And the only time I would stop is if I had to feed the children, pick up the children, take care of mom. But in between all of that, it was like, I'm doing this thing, and it's all encompassing. And so that was definitely not a healthy way to go about it. But I got caught up in it, and I didn't realize it, until it was just this machine. And then
I
when
think
my
it may have been
mom got
do you think it may have been like a coping thing for you to be so busy that you distract yourself from the things you didn't want to have to deal with so emotionally? Because I think that's something
possibly.
I find myself guilty of that all the time. When it's a really tough moment in my life, I'm like, keep me busy with work.
Yes, yes, I definitely relate to that. And now I'm doing it with exercise. So I'm like, Reagan, you're doing the exact same thing you did, but now it's over here. So rein it back. So that's why I said I'm still working on me. And I think, adding in really amazing, valuable people like Christina as a partner who just, when my mom was sick, I like literally didn't open my computer for 10 days straight. And I had never not been on my computer like that. And it was like, I couldn't care. I was in like shock and stress and in the ICU, you just don't care about anything else. And when it was all over, I realized that I don't have to be on my computer all the time. Guess what? Everything was fine. And the most important things got handled by the amazing people that I have in my life, And so it's like, and so it just taught me to like, hold on, let's prioritize here. And so I'm still working on it. I will not claim to be good in that area quite yet, but I'm definitely like aware and working on it.
So, there's one thing I want to ask, just hearing your story too. How, and I think a lot of people can relate to the emotions you must have been feeling at that time in your life, and even maybe even today. How did you keep the hope alive through this? Because you're dealing with a husband who has health issues and it seems to be making a way out, a light at the end of the tunnel. Then your mother comes down with health issues. How did you maintain your sanity, but also keep the faith and have hope?
Well, there were quite a few years in between those two, thankfully. In fact, my husband's health has been amazing ever since 2010. And then, so it was my daughter's last year of high school and when my mom got sick. So I feel like I missed her last year of high school. That was really dark. So that's, I think one of the darkest years I've had because I wasn't doing TPT, which brought me joy, like making resources and answering questions and keeping up with the blog, all of those things. And I wasn't able to do any speaking things while she was so sick. So it all stopped, which that was a huge outlet for me. So that was gone essentially. And then was not home, was missing my daughter's last year and stressing about it. And then my mom being sick is a major emotional. So, I think just God being there. I've always, my mom has always had such a strong faith. We would have conversations when she was able to about, everything's going to be okay. And she was like, go home, be with Morgan. And I would try as much as I could, trying to balance like what I felt was best. But I think, just relying on God and knowing that he was in control and knowing that Christina and Brian were handling the essential needs of everything else, and that Tony was, like the kids were learning to drive and they were getting their homework done and they were having their different school functions and sending me pictures, and like he was handling all of that. Like everyone was handling everything, and it all just, it was okay. It was just, definitely dark and hard, but just, I guess just knowing that God was taking care of it and having that peace from that.
I love your transparency and your openness just to share that piece of your journey, because I think people see someone who's successful in something and they think that everything's just easy for them or everything was so wonderful the whole time. And it's like, no, the great stuff came from all this pain and struggle and these other things as well. I've seen some comments below of asking about materials or things like that. If people are more interested in learning more about the guided math that you do or some of your materials, where could they go to get that information?
Okay, well, my blog, my website, Tunstall's Teaching Tidbits, and I can give you the link or whatever. I don't know how we can do that, but tunstallsteachingtidbits.com is my website. And then I can also, if you sign up for the newsletter on my blog, then you'll get updates and things like that. But as far as the conference goes, the Guided Math Conference is Guided Math Game Plan. You can just Google that up. And then it's hosted by SDE. And so if you can't find that link, you can email me on the blog and I can get you that link as well. But yeah, so and also on Teachers Pay Teachers, Reagan Tunstall, you'll find all my guided math materials there, as well as on ETA Hand to Mind.
Awesome.
And Amazon.
You're everywhere.
Yeah.
So Reagan, I want to end on one question.
Yep.
And that is, if there was one thing that you wish more people knew or understood, what would that be?
Oh gosh. I think I would like to say that, like, even on my last year of teaching and having done it for years and years and years, I never felt like I truly had it all together. Like, it is an okay feeling to be like, well, that wasn't my great lesson. Just that validation for effort, because it is ever evolving and ever demanding. But, you're going to have years where you just feel like, man, I'm on top of my game. And then the very next year can bring you to your knees at the same school even. And just like, that is completely normal. And even if you look like you have it all together, I still am like, why did I become a teacher? I don't know why I thought I could teach. I just have, like, that is a complete, like, we're all human. And the babies that we have in our classroom, they have all sorts of needs. And so it's just that mixture. And so, just be like, lift each other up, validate each other, because we all are going through it together. So.
Well, Reagan, thank you so much for agreeing to come on. I admire your work and what you put out, and I know that you are so admired and loved, and so I absolutely enjoyed getting to amplify your story a little bit tonight and hear you share some of that. So thank you so much for making time to chat with me.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm honored.
And thank you to all those who are listening or viewing this. I really appreciate you joining me every single week as I find different people to chat with and allow them to share pieces of their story. I hope that you remember one thing, just like I talk about every week, is that I hope that you remember to get out there and tell your story, because every story matters. Have a great day, everybody.